To understand the origins of hybrid warfare, one must journey back to the earliest days of organized conflict, when the boundaries between conventional battle, subterfuge, and psychological manipulation were fluid and often overlapping. Although the term hybrid warfare is a modern analytical tool, historians and military scholars widely agree that blending different methods of war is as old as warfare itself. From ancient Greece and Rome to the tumultuous centuries that followed, both states and non-state actors have consistently employed a mix of military force, political maneuvering, economic pressure, and information manipulation to achieve their objectives. The Peloponnesian War, fought between Athens and Sparta in the 5th century before the Common Era, is frequently cited as an early example of hybrid warfare. Here, conflict extended far beyond traditional battles between heavily armed hoplites. The war unfolded across a broad spectrum of actions, sieges, naval engagements, alliances with third parties, and subversive efforts to destabilize each other's political systems. Both sides used propaganda and economic blockades, showing that war was not merely about swords and shields, but also about influence, resources, and morale. This combination of tactics was not unique to this conflict. Research notes that unconventional and hybrid methods had deep roots in both Greek and Roman military practice. These societies understood that overwhelming an opponent sometimes required more subtlety than brute force, so they integrated espionage, political intrigue, and psychological operations into their campaigns. Ancient commanders recognized the value of information long before the concept of information warfare was formally defined. Xerxes, in his campaigns against Greece, and Alexander the Great during his conquests, both used intimidation and psychological tactics designed to sap the enemy's will to resist. They spread rumors, orchestrated displays of overwhelming force, and manipulated perceptions to extend their influence without always relying on direct confrontation. According to research on the historical roots of information warfare, such practices continued to evolve through the 18th and 19th centuries, as leaders and military strategists used pamphlets, newspapers, and other emerging media to sway public opinion and unsettle their adversaries. These efforts foreshadowed the sophisticated information operations that would become central to hybrid strategies in later centuries. Throughout history, the line between conventional and irregular methods has often been blurred. As Williamson Murray and Peter Mansour observe, mixed tactics have been a constant in warfare from ancient times to the present. Armies might march in formation one day and melt into the countryside the next, adopting guerrilla tactics, raiding supply lines, or inciting rebellion behind enemy lines. Such adaptability was not limited to state actors. Non-state groups, rebels, pirates, and insurgents have long exploited the gaps between formal rules of war, using whatever tools were at their disposal. This historical continuum challenges the notion of a strict division between state and non-state military methods. Instead, the record suggests that hybrid approaches have always been available to a diverse array of actors. The evolution of hybrid warfare is also marked by shifts in scale and intent. Early uses of hybrid methods were often operational, aimed at winning a particular battle or campaign. Over time, these methods became more strategic, woven into broader efforts to undermine enemies and shape the outcome of conflicts before armies even met on the battlefield. States learned that economic blockades, diplomatic isolation, and even the spread of disease could be as effective as military action in weakening opponents. The growing sophistication of these approaches is evident in the way ancient and post-classical powers managed alliances, exploited rivalries, and used subversion as a tool of statecraft. The concept of hybrid warfare, then, is not a recent invention, but a lens through which to examine the persistent interplay of different forms of conflict. As research discusses, Western perspectives on hybrid warfare shifted notably after the Cold War, but the underlying practices have deep historical roots. The analytical value of the term lies in its ability to capture the complexity and interconnectedness of military, political, economic, and informational tools that have long been wielded in pursuit of national or organizational goals. Hybrid warfare's historical trajectory is also defined by its adaptability. As new technologies and societal changes emerged, so too did the methods and combinations of hybrid operations. The introduction of print media in the 18th and 19th centuries expanded the possibilities for information warfare, enabling the rapid spread of propaganda and disinformation on a scale previously unimaginable. These developments were not limited to state actors. Revolutionary movements and insurgent groups quickly recognized the power of influencing public opinion and destabilizing governments through both words and actions. The evidence suggests that blending conventional, irregular, and informational tactics is a hallmark of conflict across the ages. States and non-state actors alike have consistently sought to exploit advantages wherever they could be found, on the battlefield, in the marketplace, or within the minds of their adversaries. Hybrid warfare, as a concept, thus provides a useful framework for understanding the varied and often overlapping methods that have shaped the course of history's greatest struggles. While the specifics of hybrid warfare have shifted with each era, the underlying principles remain remarkably consistent. The use of mixed tactics, the desire to destabilize and demoralize, and the exploitation of both overt and covert means are all visible in the earliest records of conflict. Reviewing these origins makes it clear that hybrid warfare is not a break with the past, but a continuation of traditions that have always recognized war as an enterprise fought by all means available. Even as the world's understanding of conflict has evolved, the fundamental logic of hybrid approaches endures, adapting to new circumstances, yet rooted in the same strategic imperatives that guided ancient generals and modern commanders alike. Thus, the story of hybrid warfare is not one of sudden innovation, but of enduring adaptation. The historical record, with its examples from ancient Greece, Rome, and beyond, demonstrates that hybrid warfare is woven into the very fabric of human conflict, a testament to the creativity and cunning with which societies have pursued their interests across the centuries. Hybrid warfare is a term that, despite its widespread use in recent years, remains the subject of considerable debate and conceptual ambiguity among scholars and military professionals. The phrase gained prominence in the 21st century, especially as analysts sought to describe the changing nature of conflict in an interconnected and technologically saturated world. At its core, hybrid warfare refers to the blending of different methods of conflict, most notably the coordinated use of both military and non-military means, often by states or state-backed actors, to achieve strategic objectives while deliberately obscuring the line between war and peace. Unlike traditional warfare, characterized by formal battles between uniformed armies, or irregular warfare, which involves guerrilla tactics and insurgency, hybrid warfare operates in a gray zone. It systematically erases the old boundaries that once separated regular from irregular, overt from covert, and peace from war. This blurring of lines is not simply a byproduct of technological change or modern politics. Rather, it is a deliberate strategy designed to exploit the vulnerabilities of adversaries, especially those constrained by legal or normative frameworks. One of the most frequently cited definitions, emerging from the work of Frank Hoffman and echoed in military doctrine, describes hybrid warfare as the simultaneous and adaptive combination of conventional, irregular, and criminal elements within a single battle space. In practice, this might involve the use of regular armed forces alongside proxy militias, cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, economic coercion, and even organized crime. These elements are not merely used in parallel, but are often integrated in ways that amplify each other's effectiveness, creating dilemmas for defenders who struggle to discern the true nature and source of the threat. Central to the concept of hybrid warfare is the use of ambiguity as both a shield and a weapon. Hybrid actors deliberately create situations in which it is difficult, sometimes impossible, to attribute actions to a specific perpetrator with certainty. This ambiguity takes several forms. Ambiguity of intent, where the aggressor's overarching goals are unclear. Ambiguity of attribution, where it is hard to prove who is responsible for a particular action. And ambiguity of means, where the distinction between civilian and military assets or methods is blurred. The strategic value of ambiguity lies in its ability to paralyze decision-making, delay collective responses, and undermine the legitimacy of any countermeasures. In this sense, ambiguity itself becomes a kind of operational domain, one that skilled practitioners of hybrid warfare seek to dominate. Plausible deniability is another core characteristic of hybrid warfare. By using proxies, non-state actors, cyber tools, or disinformation, the primary aggressor can deny direct involvement in hostile activities. This denial is not merely a legal maneuver, but a fundamental part of the strategy, allowing the aggressor to operate below the threshold that would trigger a conventional military response from the victim or from international organizations such as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. As a result, hybrid actions often precede or facilitate more overt military interventions, softening up the target or creating confusion and division before any conventional forces are deployed. The exploitation of modern technologies is a defining feature of hybrid warfare today. Digital communication platforms, social media, and cyber capabilities have dramatically expanded the toolkit available to hybrid actors. These technologies enable rapid dissemination of propaganda, manipulation of public opinion, disruption of critical infrastructure, and intelligence gathering on an unprecedented scale. Unlike past eras, when the tools of subversion were limited to pamphlets or radio broadcasts, today's hybrid campaigns can reach global audiences in real time, making attribution and response even more challenging. Cyber attacks and information operations can be launched from anywhere, often using proxies or false flag operations to mask the true source. Hybrid warfare is also marked by asymmetry and innovation. Hybrid actors seek to exploit the specific weaknesses of their adversaries, whether those are gaps in legal frameworks, societal divisions, or technological vulnerabilities. They are not bound by the same rules or conventions as regular militaries and can therefore innovate in ways that catch traditional forces off guard. Disruptive tactics, such as sudden cyber attacks that cripple infrastructure or coordinated disinformation campaigns that sow discord and mistrust, are hallmarks of the hybrid approach. The aim is not necessarily to achieve decisive battlefield victories, but to weaken, destabilize, or coerce the opponent over time. The concept of the gray zone has become central to discussions of hybrid warfare. This refers to the space between peace and open war, where hybrid tactics are most effective. Activities in the gray zone are designed to achieve strategic objectives without crossing the threshold that would justify a full-scale military response. These might include economic sanctions, cyber intrusions, political subversion, or the use of surrogates to conduct deniable operations. Because these actions do not fit neatly into existing legal or doctrinal categories, they present significant challenges for policymakers and military planners accustomed to more clear-cut forms of conflict. Scholars have noted that the definition of hybrid warfare is still evolving, and there is no universally accepted set of criteria. Some emphasize the role of state stewardship, where governments orchestrate or sponsor irregular tactics using a combination of military and non-military means. Others focus on the spectrum of conflict, arguing that hybrid warfare is best understood as a range of activities that fall below the threshold of declared war, but are more aggressive and coordinated than mere subversion or espionage. What is clear, however, is that hybrid warfare is less about any one tactic or technology, and more about the systematic blending of methods to create confusion, delay responses, and undermine the adversary's will and capacity to resist. In sum, hybrid warfare is defined less by what it is than by what it does. It blurs boundaries, exploits ambiguity, and leverages the full spectrum of political, economic, informational, and military tools available. Its practitioners thrive in the space between established categories and legal frameworks, using innovation and adaptability to achieve their aims. As the concept continues to evolve, the challenge for defenders will be to recognize hybrid threats for what they are: complex, dynamic, and fundamentally ambiguous forms of conflict that require equally adaptive and multidimensional responses. Hybrid warfare in the 21st century is best understood not through abstract definitions, but by examining how it unfolds in real-world conflicts, where blurred lines and shifting actors create unpredictable battlegrounds. The past decade has provided an unsettling laboratory for these strategies, especially in Ukraine and Syria, where the interplay of state and non-state actors, cyber operations, information warfare, and even criminal activity has redefined what it means to wage war. The conflict in Ukraine, which began in 2014 and intensified again in 2022, offers a vivid portrait of modern hybrid warfare in action. Here, the Russian state has orchestrated a campaign that integrates regular military units with irregular militias, cyber operations, and carefully calibrated disinformation. The boundaries between state and non-state actors have become nearly invisible. Non-state proxy groups, both local and imported, have operated alongside, and sometimes indistinguishably from, Russian forces, amplifying Russia's ability to project power while maintaining plausible deniability. This deliberate ambiguity has complicated international responses, leaving Ukraine and its allies struggling to attribute attacks and formulate effective countermeasures in real time. Cyber operations have played a defining role in this conflict. The NotPetya attack of 2017, widely attributed to Russian actors, crippled Ukrainian infrastructure and then spilled over to cause billions of dollars in damage worldwide. This was not an isolated event, but part of a broader pattern. Cyber espionage, sabotage, and psychological operations have reinforced and complemented physical attacks on the ground, demonstrating a high level of synchronization between cyber and kinetic actions. Russian cyber efforts have included attacks on Ukraine's power grid, attempts to disrupt government communications, and campaigns to manipulate public opinion, not only inside Ukraine but also across Europe. In response, European states have had to rapidly strengthen their cybersecurity defenses, recognizing that critical infrastructure from electrical grids to transportation has become a front line in the gray zone of conflict. Disinformation has emerged as a primary weapon. Russian campaigns have targeted both Ukrainian and Western audiences, aiming to sow confusion, undermine trust in institutions, and erode the will to resist. Witness accounts and monitoring by international organizations have documented how waves of misleading narratives and outright fabrications are pushed through social media, news outlets, and online forums. These efforts are not isolated. They are carefully coordinated with military operations designed to paralyze decision-making and fracture alliances. The impact of such tactics has not been limited to Ukraine. Russian operations have targeted European states and the United States with sabotage, subversion, and propaganda, all intended to destabilize adversaries without crossing the threshold of open war. Hybrid warfare in Ukraine has also included the deliberate use of non-conventional weapons and the orchestration of forced migration. These actions are meant not only to achieve immediate tactical objectives, but to exhaust the resources and resolve of opponents over time. The result is a battle space where civilians are often caught in the crossfire of physical, psychological, and informational attacks, raising profound challenges for the protection of non-combatants. Turning to Syria, the complexity deepens further. Russian intervention there has showcased the adaptability of hybrid strategies across different contexts. Russia's approach in Syria has blended conventional air power with irregular forces, private military contractors, cyber operations, and relentless propaganda. This multifaceted campaign has been tailored to the operational environment, making use of proxy militias and leveraging local actors to achieve strategic goals. The Russian military has conducted information operations to bolster its allies and discredit its adversaries, while cyber capabilities have been used for intelligence gathering and disruption. Comparative analysis reveals that Russian hybrid methods in Syria differ in important ways from those employed in Ukraine. In Syria, the emphasis has often been on supporting the Assad regime through a mixture of overt and covert means, including the use of private military companies whose legal status and connections to the Russian state remain intentionally opaque. This provides a layer of deniability, complicating efforts to hold Moscow accountable for actions on the ground. At the same time, Russian cyber and information operations have targeted not only Syrian rebels, but also international media, shaping perceptions of the conflict far beyond the Middle East. The involvement of non-state actors is not limited to proxies of great powers. Groups like Hezbollah have employed their own hybrid tactics, integrating guerrilla warfare, propaganda, and cyber attacks. These methods echo Russian strategies, highlighting how hybrid warfare has become a template for both state and non-state actors seeking asymmetric advantages. Ukraine itself has adapted to this new reality, extending its own hybrid capabilities beyond its borders. Its special operations forces have been active in places as diverse as Syria, Sudan, and Mali, reflecting a willingness to project influence and gather intelligence through unconventional means. This evolution underscores the spread of hybrid warfare as both a defensive and offensive tool in the hands of smaller states. The reach of hybrid tactics now extends into the heart of global events. The campaign targeting the upcoming 2026 Winter Olympics in Milano Cortina stands as a recent example. Here, cyber attacks have been paired with coordinated information operations aimed at undermining confidence in the event's security and the host country's capabilities. The blending of digital and psychological tools is emblematic of a broader trend. Hybrid campaigns that can strike virtually any target, anywhere, without the need for massive deployments or open conflict. The Middle East provides further proof that hybrid warfare is not limited to Europe or Russian actors. The ongoing cyber clash between Iran, Israel, and the United States offers a template for future conflicts, where cyber attacks and kinetic strikes are carefully sequenced to maximize disruption while minimizing direct confrontation. These operations often unfold below the threshold of war, but their cumulative effect is to keep adversaries off balance and perpetually uncertain about what might come next. Criminality, too, has become a tool of hybrid warfare. Russian actors, for example, have been documented using organized crime networks to facilitate sabotage and subversion in Europe. This merging of crime and conflict further muddies the waters, making it increasingly difficult for law enforcement and security services to distinguish between what is purely criminal and what is strategically motivated. In sum, the modern era's most significant conflicts have become proving grounds for hybrid warfare, where state and non-state actors exploit the full spectrum of available tools, military, cyber, informational, and criminal, to achieve their aims. The impact on international security has been profound. Traditional alliances such as the European Union and North Atlantic Treaty Organization have had to contend with a range of gray zone threats that defy easy categorization or response. The unity of these organizations has often been tested by the ambiguity and relentless pressure of hybrid campaigns, forcing a reevaluation of both defensive doctrines and the very nature of warfare itself. As these case studies make clear, hybrid warfare is not a static formula, but an evolving set of tactics and strategies shaped by the actors involved and the context in which they operate. It is a challenge that transcends borders and blurs the distinction between war and peace, demanding constant adaptation from those who wish to defend themselves against its many faces. Across the globe today, governments and alliances are grappling with the persistent and evolving challenge of hybrid threats. Unlike the more straightforward conflicts of the past, hybrid warfare demands vigilance on multiple fronts: military, legal, economic, and informational, often all at once. The pace of adaptation has become a defining measure of national security, as adversaries blend traditional force with covert means, exploiting every ambiguity and gap in existing frameworks. Responding to such threats is a formidable task, prompting deep institutional change and, at times, uncomfortable self-examination for even the most established powers. Modern militaries, for example, have found that countering hybrid threats stretches their resources in new and unpredictable ways. Hybrid conflicts do not announce themselves with clear lines of battle or uniformed adversaries. Instead, they require constant readiness for a spectrum of incidents, from cyber attacks to sudden disinformation campaigns, economic pressure, or the infiltration of critical infrastructure. This unpredictability has forced armed forces to rethink not only their operational doctrines, but also how they allocate troops, invest in technology, and train for scenarios that rarely fit neatly into existing playbooks. As research on military resource demands describes, the challenge is as much about managing uncertainty as it is about matching an adversary's capabilities. In response, North Atlantic Treaty Organization and the European Union have taken significant steps to coordinate their strategies. Cooperation between these organizations has become a cornerstone of Europe's response to hybrid threats, with special attention paid to information sharing and joint planning. There is a growing emphasis on intelligence cooperation, not only to detect threats early, but also to attribute attacks or subversive activities with enough confidence to justify a collective response. This is no simple matter. The very nature of hybrid tactics is to obscure responsibility, making it difficult for states to respond quickly without risking escalation or miscalculation. As a result, North Atlantic Treaty Organization has crafted strategies focused on resilience, deterrence, and rapid adaptation. These strategies emphasize not only military readiness, but also the ability of societies to absorb shocks and continue functioning in the face of cyber attacks, disinformation, or economic sabotage. Legal frameworks have proven especially difficult to adapt. Hybrid threats, by design, exploit the gray zones and gaps in international law. Traditional laws of armed conflict were conceived with clear distinctions in mind between peace and war, combatant and civilian, military and non-military targets. Hybrid warfare deliberately blurs these boundaries, leaving governments and international organizations struggling to determine when and how to act. For example, the challenge of attribution pinning responsibility for a cyber attack or information operation on a specific actor often delays or complicates legal responses. This ambiguity can paralyze decision-making, making it hard for victim states to build consensus for sanctions or proportionate countermeasures. Legal scholars and military lawyers have therefore urged a focus on what they call legal resilience. This means preparing national legal systems to respond flexibly to hybrid threats, closing gaps where possible, and developing procedures for rapid action when attribution is murky. Some have called for new international agreements or clarifications, especially in areas like cyber operations and the use of proxies, but such efforts are slow and often contentious. The debates are not merely academic. Real-world incidents, from cyber intrusions to covert sabotage, routinely test the limits of existing legal norms. In recent years, legal and ethical debates have intensified in response to hybrid operations in Ukraine, Israel, and other conflict zones, highlighting the urgent need for clearer guidance and more robust mechanisms for collective action. Within NATO, the adaptation process has been ongoing and iterative. The alliance has established new bodies and frameworks dedicated to countering hybrid threats, integrating civilian and military expertise, and developing rapid response protocols. Notably, NATO and the European Union have worked to harmonize their approaches, recognizing that hybrid threats rarely respect national borders and often target the seams between different jurisdictions or institutions. The European Center of Excellence for Countering Hybrid Threats has emerged as a key hub for research, training, and policy development, helping member states identify vulnerabilities and share best practices. Despite these efforts, significant challenges remain. Measuring the effectiveness of counter-hybrid strategies is notoriously difficult. Success is often defined by what does not happen: a cyber attack that fails, a disinformation campaign that fizzles, an election that proceeds without interference. This makes it hard for governments to justify investments or demonstrate progress to the public. Confidence in military and policy responses can waver, especially when adversaries continually adapt their methods or find new ways to exploit social divisions and technological vulnerabilities. Policy frameworks at the national and multinational levels increasingly stress the need for a whole-of-government approach. This means bringing together not only the armed forces and intelligence agencies, but also law enforcement, public health, infrastructure operators, and civil society. The logic is clear: hybrid threats are designed to slip through cracks, so the response must be seamless and coordinated. Education and training are also evolving, with military academies and civilian institutions teaching new concepts and case studies to prepare leaders for the complexity of hybrid conflict. These efforts recognize that resilience is not just about hardened defenses, but about adaptability, informed decision-making, and the capacity to recover quickly from setbacks. Some experts argue that deterrence must become more proactive, especially against sophisticated state actors. This includes measures such as rapid and coordinated sanctions, public attribution of hostile activities, and visible demonstrations of alliance unity. The goal is to raise the costs and risks for would-be aggressors, making hybrid operations less attractive or effective. However, this approach is not without its risks, as misattribution or premature escalation can carry unintended consequences. Underlying all these efforts is a growing awareness that hybrid threats are not going away. As the European Union integrates hybrid threat response into its internal security policy, and as NATO continues to refine its comprehensive approach, the struggle is likely to remain open-ended. The lines between geopolitics and internal security continue to blur, with adversaries seeking to exploit not only military weaknesses but also societal rifts and legal ambiguities. Ultimately, the response to hybrid warfare is an ongoing process of learning, adaptation, and sometimes painful compromise. Governments and alliances are still searching for the right balance between resilience and deterrence, flexibility and certainty, secrecy and transparency. What is clear is that the challenge of hybrid threats is reshaping the way nations think about security, law, and the projection of power in the 21st century. The contest continues, not only on the battlefield but across the entire spectrum of modern society. As the 21st century unfolds, hybrid warfare is no longer just a shadowy backdrop to conventional conflict. It has become the main stage where global power struggles play out. What distinguishes the future of hybrid warfare is not only the ongoing blurring of lines between war and peace, or the reliance on ambiguity and deniability, but also the relentless pace of technological change and the willingness of both states and non-state actors to exploit new tools and vulnerabilities. The landscape is shifting, as emerging technologies and innovative organizational strategies promise to transform not just how hybrid campaigns are waged, but also who can wage them and to what effect. A defining trend in the evolution of hybrid warfare is the increasing use of proxies and the careful cultivation of deniability. Autocratic powers, in particular, have shown a marked preference for hybrid approaches, finding in them both flexibility and insulation from direct accountability. The use of proxy forces, whether militias, contractors, or loosely affiliated cyber operatives, allows powerful states to influence events at arm's length, shaping outcomes without leaving clear fingerprints. This trend is unlikely to reverse. If anything, the future may see an even broader array of actors, from regional powers to sophisticated non-state groups, adopting these tactics to pursue their objectives under the radar of international scrutiny. The logic is clear. Ambiguity confounds response, and deniability offers a shield against escalation or retribution. Alongside these strategic choices, technological advancements are opening up new domains and methods for hybrid action. Artificial intelligence stands out as a particularly powerful enabler. As artificial intelligence systems become more capable, they are being used not only to automate attacks but also to analyze vast amounts of data for vulnerabilities, identify targets for disinformation, and adapt tactics in real time. Recommendation algorithms, once associated mainly with consumer technology and social media, are increasingly being repurposed as instruments of influence and control. These algorithms can be manipulated to amplify polarizing content, shape public discourse, and nudge populations toward desired behaviors, all while concealing the hand behind the curtain. The very tools designed to personalize our digital experience are, in the hands of skilled operators, becoming weapons in the contest for minds and hearts. Quantum technology, though still in its infancy, looms on the horizon as another potential game-changer. The advent of quantum computing threatens to upend the foundations of digital security, potentially rendering current encryption standards obsolete. For hybrid warfare, this means that the sanctuaries of secure communication and protected data could be breached, exposing both state secrets and critical infrastructure to new forms of exploitation. While the practical deployment of quantum technology may still be years away, the race to develop and integrate it into hybrid strategies is already underway, with major powers investing heavily in research and development. Biotechnology is also emerging as a tool with dual-use potential. Advances in synthetic biology, gene editing, and bioinformatics create opportunities not only for medical breakthroughs, but also for novel forms of sabotage or subversion. In a hybrid context, the line between legitimate research and covert weaponization can be vanishingly thin. The possibility of engineered biological agents targeting specific populations, or of biological misinformation campaigns aimed at sowing panic and mistrust, is increasingly discussed in security circles. While the full implications of these technologies are not yet clear, their integration into hybrid arsenals is a significant concern for the future. Space, once the exclusive domain of superpowers, is rapidly becoming a contested arena in hybrid conflict. Satellites underpin much of the world's communications, navigation, and intelligence-gathering infrastructure, making them attractive targets for disruption or manipulation. The ability to interfere with or disable satellites, whether through cyber means, electronic warfare, or physical attack, offers new levers for hybrid actors seeking to disrupt military operations or sow chaos in civilian life. As more states and private entities place assets in orbit, the risks and opportunities for hybrid action in space are only increasing. These technological currents do not unfold in isolation. Instead, they interact and amplify one another, creating an environment in which hybrid threats can emerge suddenly, mutate rapidly, and cross borders with ease. The rise of algorithmic warfare exemplifies this convergence. Algorithms that once served benign commercial purposes are being retooled for military advantage, shaping everything from target selection in cyber operations to the dissemination of propaganda. Military organizations are being forced to innovate, rethinking traditional hierarchies and decision-making processes to keep pace with adversaries who move at the speed of code and data. This dynamic quality, the constant adaptation and evolution of hybrid tactics, has led some analysts to describe the emerging landscape as fifth-generation warfare. In this new era, the boundaries between physical and virtual, military and civilian, become ever more porous. Conflict is no longer limited to battlefields. It is waged across social networks, supply chains, and critical infrastructure. The aim is less to achieve decisive victories than to create persistent disruption, uncertainty, and advantage in a world where the rules are in flux. The consequences for global security are profound. Hybrid warfare has the potential to disrupt global supply chains, undermine business confidence, and inflict economic harm far beyond the immediate targets of any given campaign. As businesses become more digitally interconnected, they are increasingly exposed to hybrid tactics, whether through ransomware attacks, theft of intellectual property, or coordinated attempts to manipulate markets and public opinion. The private sector, once a bystander in matters of conflict, now finds itself on the front lines, compelled to invest in resilience and adapt to a world where the source of risk is often unclear and the threat landscape is constantly evolving. For states and alliances, the challenge is equally formidable. The traditional tools of defense, military force, deterrence, diplomatic pressure must now be supplemented by new forms of vigilance and adaptability. Organizational innovation will be essential, as will cooperation across sectors and borders. The future of hybrid warfare will reward those who can anticipate shifts in technology, adapt tactics in real time, and build resilient systems that can absorb shocks and recover swiftly. There is no final victory in hybrid warfare, only an ongoing contest of adaptation and counter-adaptation. The tools may change, algorithms, quantum computers, engineered genes, satellites, but the underlying logic endures, to exploit ambiguity, to target vulnerabilities, and to outpace the defender's ability to respond. In this environment, continued vigilance is not a luxury, but a necessity. The landscape of conflict may grow more complex and unpredictable, but the imperative remains the same: to understand, to adapt, and to prepare for the hybrid threats that are sure to come.